They were paid barely survival wages. They were treated in all kinds of deceptive ways. The owners of the Triangle Factory, for instance, during one particular rush season, they promised the women and girls there more money if they stayed and worked even longer hours. The payoff turned out to be stale pumpkin pies that had gotten from a local bakery. And if you didn't like this, too bad. You had big signs in the Triangle Factory lobby saying, if you don't come in to work on Saturday, which was the Sabbath for a lot of the girls who were Jewish, don't come in on Monday. So you were expected to put aside your religious beliefs and everything else and just do whatever the boss said. And once inside the factory, you generally weren't allowed to talk, you weren't allowed to whistle. You were just supposed to keep your nose right to the sewing machine. You were docked for any garments you ruined. If in the constant rush you put a needle through your finger, which was quite common, and bled on some fabric, then you were fined for that.
And when you talk about barely subsistence wages, give me a sense of where these people would be living at the time, and give me a sense of where maybe like the owners, for instance, would be living at this time. Just give me a sense of their different sort of economic experiences at that time.
Yeah, about the only way families could make it was to stay together as families, which meant being cramped together in tiny apartments. If you go down to the Lower East Side Tenement Museum, which has a great exhibit of that, of how people live and work in this actual tenement they restored, tiny spaces, one bathroom in the hall for the whole floor, families of 7, 8, 10 people living in 3 tiny rooms, most of the children usually having to sleep on things like 2 chairs put together, sleep on the floor. Whereas the owners of the Triangle Factory, 2 men named Max Blank and Isaac Harris, lived in luxury. Max Blank had a mansion out in Ocean Parkway. Isaac Harris lived in what was described as a luxurious Upper West Side townhouse. They had cars, which few people did. They had chauffeurs. They really had it made.
And so it's under that backdrop that you had these labor protests. You had 20,000 women on the streets of New York being clubbed by these cops who were essentially, in one form or another, working for these businesses. Yeah. And give me a sense of just how this factory that Harris and Blank set up was considered a new model, like a new paradigm for this type of business.
Yeah, the factory was considered as a new scientific way of doing business. And it was an improvement over what were, technically the Triangle Factory was just that, a factory, as opposed to sweatshops. And sweatshops were really referred to as people working in their own homes, which were really terrible conditions and, just very little space. You had, a couple of strangers in your house all the time, children wandering, just an awful way to work. The factory was up on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of the 10-story Ash building in Greenwich Village. The building itself was non-inflammable, had various devices, steel frame construction and all that made it that. You had these big open factory floors, which was, crammed with rows of tables where people, did the sewing, but it was still kind of big open space. There were windows, there was light, there was a lot more air than in your basic sweatshop. Of course, even then, you had so much lint in the air that by midday they had to turn on the lights inside the factories, even on a sunny day, just so people could see what they were doing. But it was considered a real step up in how you would work.
Okay, now so we've laid the sort of the premise, and we've got to take a break. But when we come back, we'll talk about the horrible tragedy that befell the workers in that factory, and we'll talk about the implications of it for all of us today and how it shaped the way in which we work today and the rights that we all have when we go into work. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this.